Welcome back, everyone, to Weekly Neurology Deep Dive. This week, we're diving into a study that's causing quite a stir. It's raising a few eyebrows, let's just say that.
Yeah, it's definitely challenging some of those assumptions we often have about the aging brain and, exercise.
But before we really get into it, the usual disclaimer. This deep dive is purely for educational purposes and not medical advice. We're just skimming the surface here. So if you really want to get into the nitty-gritty, definitely grab the full paper yourself.
Yeah, it's a dense one for sure.
So let's get down to it. What's all the commotion about?
Well, this study, published in BMC Geriatrics, it followed a group of 276 adults over the span of 4 years. Their average age at the beginning was 66, and they were split into three groups, those doing heavy resistance training, a moderate training group, and then your control group, the folks who weren't exercising.
Okay, a pretty standard setup for a study like this. So what did they find?
Well, this is where things get a little bit unexpected. The researchers tracked how brain volume changed over those 4 years. And what they saw was that all three groups, regardless of their exercise routine, they all experienced a decrease in total gray matter volume.
So even those who were hitting the weights harder, they were still seeing that gray matter decline, just like those who weren't working out at all.
That's right. And it wasn't just the total gray matter. They also noticed declines in the hippocampus, which, plays a big role in memory. And they even saw declines in certain areas of the prefrontal cortex, the ones involved in that fire level thinking. Those functions that we tend to see become a little bit more vulnerable as we age.
That's surprising to hear. I've always kind of thought that staying active, especially with resistance training, would mean a healthier and more resilient brain.
It's the common belief, and there's definitely research out there that backs up those benefits of exercise for the brain. But this study kind of throws a curveball, at least when it comes to older adults who are already pretty active.
Wait a second, you said these participants were already active?
Oh, they were. These folks were averaging close to 10,000 steps a day when the study started. They were far from being couch potatoes.
That's a pretty key detail. So I guess what we're seeing is, for this group, resistance training may not be giving them that extra boost against age-related gray matter decline. But what about those who aren't already clocking in 10,000 steps a day? Could they be seeing bigger benefits from adding resistance training into their routine?
That's the question, isn't it? And unfortunately, this particular study doesn't give us that answer. It kind of leaves us with more questions than answers, which is often the case with good research, I guess.
It definitely makes us rethink some things and shows us that we need to delve deeper into this area. Did the study look into white matter at all?
They did. They specifically looked at those white matter hyperintensities. Think of them as those little, almost like scars on brain scans that we often associate with aging.
Okay, and what about those scars? Did the exercise groups show any differences there?
Well, interestingly enough, all the groups, even the control group, showed an increase in those white matter hyperintensities over the 4 years. There wasn't much difference between those lifting weights and those who weren't.
So that's another point against resistance training then. Is there anything positive we can take away from this study?
There is one interesting finding. While resistance training didn't seem to directly impact the gray matter, or those white matter scars we were talking about, they did find this kind of peculiar connection between changes in leg muscle strength and changes in those white matter hyperintensity volumes.
So stronger legs might be linked to healthier white matter as we age. That sounds like a pretty crucial point for neurologists.
It is, especially considering that white matter health is so important for communication between different parts of the brain. Think of it as the brain's internal wiring system.
And if that wiring isn't working properly, well, that can lead to all sorts of issues, from cognitive decline to trouble with movement and balance.
Exactly. So even though the study didn't show the big gray matter benefits that we might have anticipated from resistance training, that white matter finding, it opens up a whole new path for us to explore and potentially intervene. It's almost like we thought we were heading straight for gray matter city, but this study's saying, hey, maybe we need to take a little detour through white matter value.
So what does this detour mean for our patients, especially those dealing with age-related cognitive decline? Should we still be recommending resistance training?
Well, that's the big question, isn't it? This study doesn't really give us a clear-cut answer, but it does give us some interesting hints, things we as neurologists need to think about.
Like what?
Well, for one thing, it suggests that for those older adults who are already quite active, maybe just focusing on gray matter volume isn't the whole picture. Perhaps we should be looking more at white matter health, especially when it comes to maintaining that functional independence.
What do you mean by that?
Well, think about the challenges our older patients face. Falls, difficulty walking, that processing speed slowing down. These are often stemming from that declining white matter integrity, that communication between different brain regions getting disrupted. If we can keep that wiring in good shape, we might be able to help them hold on to their independence and their quality of life for longer.
So while this study didn't show us the gray matter boost we thought we'd see, it did uncover this potential connection between leg strength and white matter health.
Exactly. And that connection could be a real game changer for how we approach patient care.
It's like we need to change how we talk about exercise and brain health. It's not just about making the brain bigger. It's about keeping those pathways communicating smoothly.
I like that. We need to put more emphasis on those functional benefits of exercise, especially strength training for our aging patients. Stronger legs may not equal bigger brains, but they could mean fewer falls, better balance, and ultimately more independence.
And that's something that patients can really connect with. They want to stay active and involved in their lives. They want to be able to do things for themselves.
Absolutely. And this study gives us some early evidence to back up that idea that even if we're not seeing dramatic changes in gray matter, strength training can still help achieve those goals.
But let's be real here. There are limits to this study. We can't base everything on just one study.
Of course not. We need more research, especially studies that follow people for a longer time. We need to look at different types of resistance training too. Maybe it's not all about lifting heavy weights. Maybe it's about targeted exercises that improve functional strength and balance.
We also need to see how resistance training affects different groups of people, those who are more sedentary versus those who are already pretty active, those with certain neurological conditions.
Absolutely. We can't just assume that what works for one person will work for everyone. And we need to be aware of each individual's needs and limitations when we're making recommendations about exercise.
So while we're waiting for more research to come out, what's the main takeaway for neurologists right now? Should we still be encouraging our patients to get moving?
For sure. There's plenty of evidence out there that shows the benefits of exercise for overall health, including brain health. This study doesn't change that.
But maybe we need to tweak our message a little. Instead of focusing on just preventing the brain from shrinking, we should be highlighting how resistance training might help preserve that white matter integrity, improve balance and coordination, and ultimately improve quality of life as people get older.
I think that's a great way to put it. It's about helping our patients live the best lives they can, both physically and mentally, for as long as possible.
This study brings up so many interesting questions about how aging, exercise, and brain health all connect.
It really does, and it shows just how important it is to keep learning, stay up to date, and be a part of that ongoing scientific conversation. Our understanding of the brain is constantly evolving, and that's what makes neurology so fascinating.
It really reminds us that we never stop learning in this field.
Yeah, and that's what's so great about urology. Always something new to discover.
Speaking of discoveries, this study opens up some interesting paths for future research. What kind of questions come to mind for you?
Well, I think first and foremost, we need more long-term studies. Looking at resistance training and brain health over a longer period. 4 years is a decent starting point, but we need to see what happens over, let's say, a decade or even more. Do those benefits we're hoping for eventually show up? Do they change based on how intense the training is or what type of exercises are being done? Those are the things we need to be figuring out.
It would also be helpful to compare how resistance training affects different groups.
Right.
Those who are inactive compared to those who already get a lot of exercise, people with specific neurological conditions, maybe different age groups.
Definitely. We need a much clearer picture of how those individual factors, things like genetics, lifestyle, overall health, how those things influence the relationship between exercise and how the brain ages.
Feels like we're just beginning to understand how all of this works together.
Oh, we are. But that's what makes it so exciting. There's so much more to uncover, and those discoveries could completely change how we approach things like preventing and treating age-related cognitive decline.
So for all those neurologists listening out there, those on the front lines, what's the key takeaway they should remember from this deep dive?
I think the main message is this: exercise, and that includes resistance training. It's still a fundamental part of staying healthy as we get older, but we need to remember it's not a one-size-fits-all approach. We need to tailor our recommendations, taking into account each patient's specific needs and situation.
And we can't forget about staying informed, keeping up with the latest research, really evaluating the evidence, and being open to changing what we practice based on new findings.
Couldn't agree more. It's a constant process of learning and discovery, and in the end, it's about giving our patients the tools they need to be active participants in their own brain health, to make informed choices that support their well-being in the long run.
Well, thank you for joining us on this deep dive into the fascinating world of exercise and the aging brain. We'll see you next time for another exploration into the latest in neurology research.